Welcome everybody back to another episode of Bobby Likes the Spooky. On the road to Halloween ends because everybody that knows me knows that Halloween is one of my favorite horror franchises ever. But y'all just coming off of the first Halloween with Miguel Myers from my Horror Confessional podcast, who was amazing. That one was pre-recorded, but this one's going to be live. And obviously, I have a special guest with me. And if you already don't know, the name is already right here underneath me, so you should already know who it is. Um, so let me bring up my guest. What's up, Joe?
How's it going?
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I mean, it's exciting to get to talk about Halloween again, right? I'm
Yeah,
not always the biggest fan of some of these new films from Blumhouse, but I like the fact that it brings Halloween back into the conversation every year, and it feels like a bit of a milestone, right? Like it's things to get excited about each Halloween season.
yes, I agree. I'm being biased. I even though I'm not the hugest fan of Blumhouse itself. But some of the choices they made in these films are kind of, excuse the doggies, everybody. Um, some of the choices that they made with these films is very interesting.
Hmm.
I would call myself a super fan, because I love the first film so much.
Right.
Where anything that comes after that, I'm looking at what they did with the first film. I'm looking for like a repeat of that, but just a little amped up, but also not too amped up where it doesn't make any sense. Kind of like Rob Zombies, for instance. Like that was a
Right.
whole different situation. For me, I love Michael Myers. Well, I love what they did with Michael Myers as far as calling him the Shape.
Right.
Even though his name is Michael Myers, but a lot of the time when you see Michael Myers in that first film, it's always usually from a distance or
Hmm.
behind him, and you just see the figure of him,
Yes.
and that's why they call him the Shape. And I feel like that's so much more scarier. Um, so in the second one, which we're about to talk about soon, I do have some, I guess, questions because it's a continuation off of the first movie,
Hmm.
but it's they also make some changes as far as Michael Myers himself. There's a lot that I noticed, but it's reasons why I love this film. But before we get into it, would you like to plug your socials and where everybody can find you? They should already know who you are, Joe, but still.
Should never make that assumption, right? I mean, you
Listen,
never
I
know.
mean, you're famous.
So famous, yes. Okay, so yeah, if folks want to get in touch with me, you can do so on Twitter or Instagram at B Stole My Remote, and that's the letter B. And of course, yeah, I'm the co-host of Horror Queers as well as many, many other podcasts. You and I have a podcast together along with like a
Hmm.
dozen other folks. So
Yes,
yeah, I'm just hanging around the interwebs.
yes, we're all there and we love it. And I just loved y'all recent episode with Mr. Don Mancini. That was good. Okay, I got so much tea from that episode, and I recommend that everybody go and listen to Horror Queers. First of all, listen to Horror Queers in general. But if you're a fan of
Specifically that one.
yeah. But if you're a fan of Chucky's, which is premiering, I believe tomorrow actually.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
If you want some deets in the tea from the creator himself, Don Mancini, listen to Horror Queers. I mean, they asking all the questions, and I'm living.
It was such a get. Yeah. Initially,
Yeah.
we were like, okay, we're just going to walk through the one film because, like, it's the fifth anniversary of Cult of Chucky, I think even this week. And we thought, okay, so we'll bring him on and we'll just, like, really do a deep dive. And then we thought, no, we've got access to the man himself. Like, we need to ask him all the questions we have ever
Yes.
had. Like, and he's such a genuine, just down to earth guy, too. It's fantastic. You expect that these people are going to have, like, huge inflated egos. And instead he's like, yeah, I make this franchise. I love this character. I love working with these actors. And you think, oh, relatable content.
Yeah, he's great, and I'm just so happy that you guys like had him on the show, and just it was really, really, really good. I told you y'all famous. Um,
With the hand.
so Joe, when do you remember the first time you seen this movie?
Yeah, so this is hilarious because so Halloween is not one of my it's not my favorite of the big 80s franchises. That would be Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes.
So I
Okay.
remember doing a bit of a deep dive of both Halloween and Friday the 13th with my sister back in the 90s. Like we just went to the video store, rented all of them,
Uh,
and just marathoned. But the problem is that they all mesh together. So like sometimes my memories of Halloween and Friday the 13th are overlapping and intersecting. And I'm like, no, that's not right. That's
that's
the wrong
default.
shape. So I ended up going back and doing a dive, I think, when the announcement that the new films were coming out. And I realized that I had never actually seen Halloween 2 until
Oh,
maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. I recognize my timelines are not matching up, so I apologize. But
it's okay.
it was more recent than I care to admit because I'd always heard folks say the first film is really great. It's iconic. It's got all these elements that have defined contemporary horror. And then people kind of talk shit about the second film. Like, it's not a bad film, but they always just compare it to the first film and say how it doesn't live up to that legacy. So I never felt like I was in a rush to check it
Yeah.
out. And when I did, I was like, oh, this is solid. It's a
Yeah.
very 80s slasher to me.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that people who love the original have so much difficulty with is that this is just like mean and straightforward. But I also kind of really respect the film for being that way.
Yes. I love that you said that because I used to be one of those people. Because again, the first film doesn't really have any blood if you think about it.
Mhm.
The kills weren't really up there. Maybe we
No.
had like 3 kills, maybe.
Mhm.
It was just more suspenseful than
Yes.
anything. Where in this film, like you said, it's more of a slasher. Just no
Yeah.
fucks given. I'm just killing everybody,
He
and
is
you
killing
see it.
everyone.
You see it. Um, and I think it has to do with other movies coming out and them showing more violence and more, especially in
100%.
the 80s. Because this movie came out in 81.
Mhm.
So I believe Friday the 13th was already out.
It was. Yeah.
A Nightmare on Elm Street didn't come out until 84,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so we didn't have that. But I think when Jason came about, that's when they were just like, we want to see more of this. We want to
Mhm.
see more tits. We want to see more ass. We want to see more blood. We want to see all of that. And the
Yeah.
first film didn't really gave us that. I mean, it gave us tits a little bit, but it
A
was
little
done
bit.
tastefully. Yeah.
Yes. Tasteful tits, as we
Tasteful
say.
tit. Exactly. You just seen it like a little bit, and they kept the frame just right here where it wasn't
Mhm.
like too much. But and then when he was strangling her, you just see it pop in and out. But that was really it.
Yeah.
Um,
Whereas this one is like there's fully people just like fucking,
yeah.
and you're thinking, "Oh, okay, so we're." It's not that it's less classy, it's just more, I think, a sign of the times, right? Like, this is
Hmm.
what they took away from Friday the 13th is the lesson learned was, like, harder kills, more graphic sexuality.
Yes. And it's crazy because Halloween is one of those movies where all the rest of the horror franchise is just trying to live up to. But
Mhm.
then you Halloween still falls in that I guess world where they're trying to keep up with,
Yes.
like for instance, again, like Friday 13th, they're trying to keep up with them. And then to fast forward even more in the 90s when we got Scream, and then H2O came up after that.
Yes.
H2O is literally a Scream movie just with Michael
100%.
Myers and Laurie in it. Like,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, why are y'all doing this? Like, Halloween is its own thing. What are you doing? Um, but I get it because you had the creators involved in it. But like one of my biggest problems, and I'm probably going to say this in every video, is that they literally used the soundtrack from Scream in
Yes.
H2O. It was a scene where Gale was being chased by Ghostface in the first Scream, and they
Mhm.
literally used that same score for a
Yep.
certain scene in H2O. And I'm just like, y'all just couldn't get creative. Y'all had to really rip off a score from a movie that is definitely influenced by it.
Yep.
But what I do appreciate with Scream and Halloween is that they do show homage to each other. Like in the first Scream, you see them watching Halloween on the TV, and
Mhm.
then in H2O, you see them watching Scream 2 on
Yeah.
the TV. So I do love that they had that connection to each other. But it's just I feel like Halloween don't need to copy or try to keep up with anybody. It should be its own thing. And I'm happy with these new movies that I think that's what they're doing, and it's kind of now the horror movies that we're getting, the requels are starting to copy off of Halloween because it kind of started the whole requel thing. So now,
Yeah.
you're getting all these movies that's trying to bring back legacy characters because of Halloween
Mhm.
2018 and stuff. So now I feel like Halloween is starting to find its thing. But um yeah, with Halloween 2, I feel like it didn't need to do that, but I don't know. It did take me out, but now I love the movie.
Oh, that's
Um
good.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a confronting film, I think, if you try to do any kind of marathon, because it's not that the tone is different. And obviously, we're bringing back, Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis, and we still have the involvement of John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. And yet, there's something about it that does feel like, yeah, something has changed, right? Like it's not quite
Hmm.
the same thing, but in the world of the film, it's the exact same night. Like everything is meant to be, you should be able to watch these back to back, but it doesn't quite work that way. So there's some kind of jarring disconnect. But if you can take Halloween 2 for what it is and just as its own kind of standalone thing, which is ironic because it's obviously a sequel, but
Yeah.
if you look at it just as this is a Halloween slasher in the 80s, not the 70s like the first one, then all of
Mhm.
a sudden this film does work. Like you're not getting that rich character development, which I think is one
No.
of the things that people are sort of missing. Like there's a couple of genuinely interesting characters in here, and they just
Hmm.
don't have enough screen time. Like the movie doesn't care about them in that way. It's very much the Jamie Lee Curtis and her atrocious wig show. So
I was waiting to talk about the wig.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm terrible at spotting wigs unless it's like
Oh,
really shitty, dollar store wigs on TV. I usually can't tell that much, but holy mother of God, this is a
yeah,
bad wig.
yeah. Her wig is sitting high, honey.
It is sitting
That
high.
is
Mhm.
sitting really high. Even as a kid watching this, I noticed that. I'm like, her hair looks really, really different.
Something's
Something's
not
off,
working.
right?
I mean, in fairness to Jamie Lee Curtis, she was a different woman at this point, right? Like many years had passed. She had taken on different roles, but
Yeah,
still you're just like, "Oh my God, can we have a scene where she, Ellen Ripley's this shit up to give herself a better cut so that
right. Yeah, I think she was doing like the fog around this time, so she had like a
yeah,
shorter cut and her hair was
yes.
brown, and I think she was doing something else as well. But yeah, the wig was really bad. And if you think about it, like Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't really in this movie that much. Like
No.
she probably, I'm not too sure. I probably have to Google it, but I think she probably had like maybe 6 minutes of screen time. I'm just gonna say like 7 to 8 of screen time.
I mean, I think she said it a little bit more than that, but yeah, like
No!
it is
Alright, so
it is so stretched out, right? Whereas in the first
yeah.
one, we're really used to having concentrated sections with this character. And
Mhm.
it's hard because we love Laurie Strode so much, right? Like I don't know, man. She's iconic.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably too much to say she's the voice of a generation, but like she's one of the quintessential final girls. And in this
Mhm.
film, it does feel like, oh, okay, well, let's just put her to bed for a little while and we'll focus on some other characters.
Yeah. I mean, they try to do it with, like, Halloween Kills with just keeping her in the hospital in the background
Mm,
while everybody else had, like, their own thing going on.
yeah.
And this I know you're not a fan of Halloween Kills, but I like it. Alright, so real quick, I know Halloween Kills is not a good movie. It is
Okay.
not a good movie, but I take it it's a fun slasher. I like seeing people getting killed the way they got killed in the movie. It was fun to me,
Okay.
you know what I mean? It's a fun movie. And being as though I am a super fan from the first one,
Right.
I enjoyed the flashbacks. I enjoyed the fact that they recreated the house and
Okay.
every little detail. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that they continued it after the same night from the first one and kind of added a layer to that. I
Mhm.
enjoyed Donald Pleasance making the return. Well, Dr. Loomis, I'm sorry, he's dead. Dr. Loomis coming back,
Mhm.
and me thinking it's a deep fake in the theater. So I'm just sitting there like, yo, that's insane. I was just like going off in the theater. And then when I realized that that was actual
It's a natural
prosthetics
actor. Yep.
and the actual actor, and they just added some like makeup and prosthetics to his face, I'm just like, yo, this is great. Like they really went in and trying to make I guess, a fun movie. I don't know if they were trying to make a good movie. It wasn't good, but I do enjoy what we got. I do put it on from time to time and just, suspend disbelief and just go in, you know.
Mhm.
Because to me, 2018 is the better movie
Right.
compared to
Yes.
Kills. But if you was to ask me which movie I would prefer to watch more, I'm gonna put on Kills.
Okay. See,
But
these are interesting discussions, and I actually feel like there's a correlation to the discussions that people can have around the original Halloween to Halloween 2, right? It's like if you're looking for something, I mean, I'm not going to suggest that Halloween 2018 is a cerebral film by any
oh
stretch
no,
of the imagination, but it is the sort of more traditional or classical mode to storytelling, which is what we
hmm
get in John Carpenter's original. And then we get this sequel, which is obviously still reverent, paying homage, inserting callbacks and flashbacks and other things that help us to understand that connection. But it is leaner and more focused on kills, more focused on being entertaining, right? And I think there's something
hmm
to be said for that entertainment value, right? Like
yeah,
there's when you talk to people about things like comfort films, right? It's not always the best horror films that we want to go
hmm
back and throw on. Sometimes we just want to watch something that's entertaining
trash.
and fun. Yeah,
hmm
trash, right?
hmm
So I can understand. I don't have that same relationship because I get really frustrated with the creative decisions that they make for Halloween Kills. And I'm like, you had all this time. Like you've got fucking Jamie Lee Curtis and you're making all this money. Like, why aren't you making better choices? But I can totally understand where you're coming from saying, yeah, sometimes I put it on because I just want to watch these people get brutally killed because the
hmm
kills are good in that
yeah,
movie. It's so over the top.
yeah. When I first watched it, I said the same thing. I was just like, y'all had this extra time to do because the pandemic and stuff, and I was just like, all right, I it was a lot of cringy moments.
Yep.
Evil dies tonight, of course.
Oh my
Though,
God.
like I'm tired. If this is being said
I'm
again
so
and
worried it's going to
ends,
come back, Bobby.
yeah, me
What if it
too.
comes back?
Me too. And I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I thought that was just the tagline for Kills. I'm like, all right, cool. But the amount of times they
Oh
said
my
it,
God. It's a drinking game.
it is. I feel like it's the jangle from Halloween 3 where they keep playing it over and over again, but this
It's the
time they just
earworm.
yeah, just like, oh my gosh, just stop. And even some of the dialogue in that film, it just
Oh,
even even Laurie's dialogue, I was just like, what are you saying?
yeah.
Who wrote this?
It doesn't make sense. It just
It does.
it feels like a betrayal of the character in a lot of ways, right? But
Mhm,
if you can, yeah, like if you can pull back from that and just focus on some of those set pieces, right? Like um yeah, I'm thinking of that moment in 2018 where it's just like the long take as we follow Michael through the houses and he grabs the knife. And,
yeah.
that feels quintessentially Halloween to me.
Mhm,
And that's a well done moment. Like, I don't always love everything that surrounds it, but these movies do nail particular sequences. And I
yes.
think that that applies throughout even some of the worst entries in this franchise.
Yeah. Um I I mean, a lot of people talk a lot of shit on Kills, but there's some worse even worse ones than Kills.
I mean, the
Resurrection.
director of Halloween 2 is the director of one of the bad ones.
Yes. All right. So, okay, guys. I'm obviously recording Halloween Resurrection with a guest. And we talk about that. I talk about like, oh well, the director from Halloween 2, 1981 directed Resurrection, and there's no like
It doesn't
what?
you wouldn't even know, would you?
I would when I found that out, Joe, I was gagging. I was just like,
Yeah.
wow.
But it's funny because it's a kind of move that franchises love to play, right? Like we brought back this person who did maybe not your favorite entry in the franchise, but a beloved one. Like 2 has gained a lot of acclaim. And I think even by the time we got to Resurrection, people had come around on this as a good
Mhm.
sequel. So I I'm trying to imagine what the marketing tactics would have been like in a contemporary sense. Like if Rick Rosenthal had come back to direct Halloween Ends, I feel like people would, well, after Resurrection, people would not be excited. But
No.
at the time, it would have been like, holy shit, they brought him back. Like, that's amazing. We're going to get some kind of uh, symbolic connections, like we're trying to do that legacy piece, but it is perplexing. But that movie, I feel like there's whole untold stories about something went fucking wrong with that movie. It's
Yeah,
really bad.
it existed. That's what was wrong. It
It
should have
it
never
was
happened.
shot and it
It's
played.
here. We
Yeah,
have it. Um, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a little bit of things I liked about that movie. Like
for
there are
sure.
some funny moments, but it as a whole, like that's
Hmm.
probably my like least
Oh
um recommended me revisiting
yeah. Hmm.
Halloween out of the whole entire franchise that we have. I'll even watch Halloween 5 over and over again over Resurrection, and that mess
See,
was
I
terrible.
I don't mind those middle entries. Like they are weird. And I will take weird over bad or boring any day. And
Yep.
I think part of it too is that I feel bad. Oh, I can't even remember her name. I only remember the character, but the other Jamie.
Oh,
Um,
Danielle Harris.
yes, I feel
Yeah.
bad for Danielle Harris that
Yeah.
like I think a lot of people respect her and want to see her at conventions and know her for that role. Like I remember watching Urban Legend and having people freak out when she shows up on screen, and I didn't know Halloween all that well, so
That was
I was
me.
like, I don't get it. Who is this bitch? And people were like, you need to check yourself, sir. Horror royalty on screen. So I love that, but I also
Mm,
feel like she has just been continually shat upon with these later films where it's like, oh, we're discontinuing your part of the franchise. We no longer acknowledge it. And I'm like, how many times are we going to put disrespect on this woman's name?
yeah, they did it with Halloween 6, where one, there was a special feature when they released the Scream Factory box set, and it was a new
Hmm.
interview with her, and she just came up front and was just like, I went through so much shit to try to come back as Jamie.
Right.
And for
They
one,
didn't want her.
they didn't want her. And then if they was going to bring her back, they was going to kill her off in a way that she felt wasn't respected. And
Right.
then she even got emancipated and everything to play this role. Because then they were saying she
Oof.
wasn't old enough. So she's like, all right, I really want to do this because I love Jamie.
Hmm.
And like I'm already about to be like, I guess like 18 or whatever. Anyway, so let me just get this over with. And she went
Wow.
that far to go, and she just never went through with it.
Mm.
And then she returned in Rob Zombie's Halloween as Annie
Yes.
Brackett as a returning character. Um, but even in and I love Danielle Harris. Like when I was young, I had a crush on her. I wasn't always like this, everybody. But but I still like her. She's still one of my faves. Even the little movies that she does, like I get excited watching her because she's great at what she does and it's horror. And even I'm not too sure if this is a rumor, but this is what I heard where in Halloween 2018, Judy Greer's character was supposed
Right.
to be named Jamie, I believe, but then they
Hmm.
switched it. Now that's
Yeah.
a big fuck you. Because if I played a character named Jamie Lloyd and
Hmm.
Jamie and Laurie Strode supposed to be my mother, and then
Right.
you cast, and I'm available, hello, and you cast Judy Greer, who I love me some Judy Greer, Fern
Oh,
Mayo,
always. Yes.
Violet. But no disrespect to her, but you cast her where you have
Right. You
me.
had Danielle Harris. She would have come back. She very
Mm-hmm,
publicly said that she wanted to come back to the franchise again. And they
mm-hmm.
again were like, no, thank you. We're fine.
Yeah, it's a big fuck you. So and I know she talks about it on her podcast every now and then in interviews and stuff like that. And I feel bad for her. So hopefully, whatever they do with this franchise after it ends, and if they happen to do another timeline and do it off of Halloween 4 and 5, maybe
Hmm.
she'll have her chance. We'll see.
Well, yeah. I mean, because let's be real here, Mr. Superfan. This is not the end of
No,
Halloween. Like, as long as
no,
these movies continue to make money and Blumhouse can keep the production costs low, we will continue to see new Halloween films. And it's just a matter of like, what do they choose to do with them? But
yeah,
they said when 2018 came out that they were retconning all of the timelines, that Laurie Strode was no longer going to be Michael's sister, which is of course the big revelation that happens in Halloween 2.
yeah,
And they said that they weren't acknowledging 3 through anything, but really they even said they weren't doing 2.
mm,
And then they made a bunch of callbacks to 2 in 2018. So clearly they're not above making references or doing that kind of stuff. So like there is a potential future role for someone like Danielle Harris, or fucking like what? We want to bring in Paul Rudd if we wanted to.
Well, that's what they wanted. They wanted Paul Rudd as Tommy Doyle for Halloween Kills, but he was busy doing Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Right.
And I'm happy that he did Ghostbusters Afterlife
It's a
because
better role for sure, even though
way
that
better.
movie's not that much better.
Oh, I like Ghostbusters
No,
Afterlife.
okay. So that movie is genuinely fun. We're not going to detour too much, but that movie
Yeah,
is genuinely fun. But that
yeah,
to me is one of those films where you watch it and you go, okay, I get it. We're doing this legacy acknowledgement. Like it is too much of a homage to the first two movies and
yeah,
not enough of its own thing.
yeah. I feel like like when I think got greenlit for a second one, right? Well, another.
Supposedly, I haven't heard anything new about that in a while, but
So
we'll see.
if they do that, then maybe they'll make it its own. I think they
I
just
think
wanted to
so.
bring back like all the older fans and even some of the new ones, just to like I was in the theaters teary eyed by myself. I'm not gonna lie, I was in the theaters like
Oh,
yeah,
nostalgia.
nostalgia. Like that, and then like the ending when Harold Ramis character like they kind of
Oh,
CG.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
It was
I was a ghost.
janky, but it
Yeah,
worked.
it
It
was
it
very
got the tear
janky.
ducts for
Yeah.
sure.
But I'm a ghost like I was a Ghostbusters fan grown like as a
Mhm.
kid. Like that was one of the movies I would replay over and over again because I was obsessed with it. So it was just nostalgia for me.
Sure. I
But
mean, that's
Paul
why these movies work, right? Like
yeah.
it's I don't know. I think that's one of the most fascinating things about getting to watch new Halloween movies and new Scream films, and hopefully one day like new Nightmare on Elm Street and new Friday the 13th films. But like
Yeah.
I just love how it keeps these franchises in the conversation so that we can still have those moments. And I think it's just hard for us as storied aged fans
Yeah.
to recognize that these new movies do need to work for new generations, and sometimes they're just not always for us. And
Yeah.
it's hard for us to acknowledge that, but
Hocus Pocus 2.
right? Like not every movie needs to be for you.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like, is it a bad movie or is it just not a movie for you?
Yeah. I watched Hocus Pocus 2 recently. Again, I'm a
Okay.
huge fan of
And
that
you were like, no,
movie.
this isn't my movie anymore.
So, like I talked about it with Mike on the podcast for our season premiere, and it's again things I liked about it, but it wasn't for me.
Mhm.
I appreciate them returning the nostalgia, all of that stuff, and just I feel like a kid would get at certain points,
Right.
but I just didn't care for any of the characters outside of the witches. Like at
Oh,
least in the
for sure.
first film, I enjoyed Max and Danny and Allison, and even the
Mhm.
parents, dancing. I always said that Hocus Pocus has a charm to it, and I
Yes.
think that's what Hocus Pocus 2 like it lacked that for me. So
It,
now I kind
yeah.
of compared it to Craft Legacy just a little bit,
Ah,
with the whole witch situation at the end
right.
of the film, where I felt like things were rushed, where they could have done something different, but like a
Yes.
battle or something, and it didn't go that way. They went a complete different way.
That
So
is a really interesting comparison. That's very
yeah,
savvy, Bobby. But
yeah.
I think that the main difference for me is that the craft legacy, I don't even know how we got there. I
I
apologize,
know,
but
I know.
we'll come back. We'll come back in
We'll
a
come back.
moment. But
Yeah, Halloween
um
too.
but yeah, there's something to be said about when we're trying to kind of capitalize on that IP, right? And we're thinking about, okay, how do we bring in old viewers, but how do we also make this approachable for new viewers? And then you get too many cooks in the kitchen. For me, that's Craft Legacy. I actually like that movie a lot, but I can understand why people who enjoy that first film look at it and say, what the? This is
Yeah,
not my fucking craft.
yeah,
Whereas I do think Hocus Pocus maybe suffers a bit too much from, okay, this is Disney saying, how do we make money off this, because people will not shut the fuck up about this 29 years later.
yes,
And that's fine. I think that they do a good enough job of it that it doesn't feel entirely soulless. But I mean, Trace and I speculated on our forthcoming Patreon episode that we think that this is also just the first step in more films because of the teaser at the end of it.
oh yeah, the post credit, yeah,
So I think it's kind of like, oh, well, if you didn't get enough of these characters, don't worry, you'll get more of the humans in a future film. And
I
I'm
don't
like,
care about
okay, that
them.
doesn't satisfy this
No,
film,
no.
but I think it's doing enough to make the Sanderson sisters relevant again, right? Which is what all of these reboots strive to do, right? They're trying to give us that Halloween 2 feel again, but
Mhm.
also please give us your money so that we can make more.
Yes, I'll be there to watch Hocus Pocus 3, but as long as they bring back Danny and Max Allison, and I have a good concept for the next
Ooh,
movie, but we'll talk about that later.
Disney,
Uh,
reach out. Bobby's got
yeah,
ideas.
yeah, it has something to do. It has, it
No,
has
don't give
something
it
to
away.
do.
Don't give it away.
Okay, okay, I won't give it away. But it is better than what we got in Hocus Pocus 2, I'll tell you that. But I appreciate it.
All right.
But yeah, let's talk about Halloween. So all right, so I did a review on Halloween 2 for Fangoria invited me to do something for them, I think last year, and I forgot the name of the stream thing. It was during October, and I did like a quick 6-minute video, I believe. And I had a
Wow. I'm
theory
sorry. Who's
about
famous? Who's famous? Fangoria is not
no.
reaching out to me, baby.
No, no, no. And I'm thinking about uploading that video, but I don't know. But
Do
I
it.
did mention something in that video where in Michael Myers, okay. So in the first film, he's again, like I mentioned before, he's the shape.
Mhm.
They and we just know that he's also a man that escaped from, this mental hospital, and now he set his eyes on Lori and her friends, and now he's just going after them. We don't have no motive, no nothing, blah 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 blah
Mhm.
blah.
Yep.
And if you listen to Dr. Loomis, he constantly mentions about him having the blackest eye, the devil's eyes, and I think that's what makes Michael Myers even more scary because you have Dr. Loomis hyping him up,
Oh
where
yeah.
it makes him more terrifying. So in my and it only
Dr.
gets
Loomis is
worse.
practically like booking Michael Gigs. He's so excited about
Yes.
everything he's doing. It's like, okay, are you a professional or are you, yes, his hype man? His like
I didn't think of it like that, and that's so true. Oh my gosh. And it only gets worse with the sequels that he's in. Like he gets
oh,
like even more like erratic, and it's hilarious.
God bless Donald Pleasance in this
And
role. Just
and
chewing pieces of scenery, full
mhm,
ham. I love it.
yes. But when he does that with Michael, and so it makes Michael a little bit scary. So when we get to the end of the movie and he shoots Michael off the balcony, he claims that he shot him 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael, if you realize he doesn't run, but he kind of walks fast. He still has like this man type of behind a mask type of feel to him.
Right.
And like a human type of feel to him. So when we get to Halloween 2, I feel like all of that is out the window.
Mm.
Mike, and even though this is a different actor playing him,
Yes.
but for me, it made sense for Michael to do the things that he was doing, because I feel like once Michael got shot off that balcony, he lost all his humanity. He's just simply and purely evil at that moment.
Right.
I feel like he died and came back as just an evil person. He had some humanity in him in the first movie, but once he got shot off that balcony, he became just pure evil. So that's why maybe he walks a little bit more robotic in this film. He doesn't run, he doesn't walk fast. He's walking through fucking glass doors without flinching. He didn't do that in the first one. He has to
Mm.
break down doors by his fist. This time he's walking the fuck through shit. And then again, the kills are a little bit more aggressive. He's hitting the people in the head with hammers. He's injecting needles in people's
Oh my
eyes.
God.
He's bleeding people out with fucking syringe. Like he's doing a lot more in this
Mm-hmm.
one. And even when he's at the end of the film, when he's blown up and he's in flames, he's walking through the fucking flames, and I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's evil. So for me, I feel like he evolved in the second one. So that's why I think I enjoy this a little bit more, because I said, you know what, Michael's a little bit more aggressive, and this is just pure evil Michael versus the first Halloween. And Laurie even kind of says it in Halloween Kills, like every time he something he transcends. And I'm like, oh well, if you go back to Halloween 1 and 2, it's kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Halloween Kills, when they were whooping his ass and they jumped him, and then technically he died, he got shot up and stuff, and then he got back up and started whooping everybody's ass.
Yep.
So I feel like every time he's like Jazz from Girl That's Scary said he's like a Super Saiyan from Dragon Ball Z, because in Dragon Ball Z, every time a Super Saiyan get their ass whooped, they come back stronger. So that's pretty
Right.
much Michael Myers.
I love that idea. I think that's so fascinating. I've definitely heard before that the idea is like between the first film and the second film, yeah, he essentially becomes the monster that we all come to associate
Mm-hmm.
with future installments, right? He's just completely unkillable. And if you take the step back and look at the franchises and what they're doing at the time, it's clearly they learned their lesson from Jason and Friday the 13th, where he's doing a lot of the same kinds of motions. And that's perfectly fine. But I love your idea that it's basically he was once a man, and then in between movie 1 and 2, as a result of getting shot,
Mm-hmm.
they kill off the human part of him, and everything that Dr. Loomis was worrying and threatening and
It's
like
like, yep.
town crying about has come to pass. And now, yeah, he is truly unstoppable. That's
Mm-hmm.
really fun.
Yeah. And I think that's how I was able to um accept this movie for what it was too, because I'm just like, it's something off about him. And I'm just like, well, in actuality, it's a different actor, and he
Right. Yeah.
just didn't.
He just moves differently.
He just moves differently, right? He can't replicate what Nick Castle did in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched even some like behind the scenes stuff where Deborah Hill was just like, I forgot I think he's a stuntman slash actor who plays Michael Myers in this one, and I forgot his name, but I remember he was saying that Deborah Hill was saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, you got the job, sure, whatever." But then in later interviews, she was just like, "Yeah, he doesn't walk like Nick Castle. Like I don't know what happened, but you
Yeah.
gave him the job."
Yeah. So it's a guy named Dick Warlock.
Dick Warlock, yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It's the funniest thing, right? I mean, when you read the behind the scenes interviews or listen to anything that like John Carpenter and Deborah Hill did, they basically sound like how Stephen King talked about writing his short stories when he was like super fucking high on coke, where you're just like, I'm not suggesting that they were high when they did this, although John Carpenter apparently drank a lot of beer when writing this script.
They
But
forced him pretty much, so he said, "I'm gonna have to get drunk doing this," and that's why we got the brother sister storyline. But we'll get to that.
right? I think it's just one of those things where they said, okay, well, we're, I guess, contractually obliged, or we feel a responsibility to come back to this, but we don't really have any ideas. And the timeline is too quick. And also, we're prepping the Fog, which is the project we're more interested in working on. So,
Yeah.
you can feel the pain points in this movie where had they had another year, had they had the full attention of John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, we probably would have gotten something more polished. We would have gotten a more consistent actor from Michael and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Like making movies is a crapshoot. It's a wonder we ever get anything, considering
Yeah.
how many people have to work on these and the deadlines and the money and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's more interesting to have fun speculations like, where you say, oh, well, I think it's because we killed off Michael's humanity. And now that's why
Mm-hmm.
we get like that to me is more fun and interesting to have a conversation around than the
Yeah.
realities of, what, this was a rush production and this is what we
Yeah.
get.
Yeah. That is absolutely true. It was definitely rushed. And I think, you know, a lot of us enjoy this not because of nostalgia too, but also because it has that connection to the first movie.
Mhm.
Like like you said earlier, you can literally watch those movies back to back, the first one, and then go into this one. But I recently watched I recently watched the TV cut of this, and
Oh,
Joe, the TV cut is horrible. Like the edits is
right.
just so all over the place. Like if you can YouTube it or whatever, like please do. Like it's bad. Like how this movie begins. Um, like this movie literally begins picking up after the end of the
Like
first one.
right afterwards. Yes.
Yeah, and we get the credits, and like you get the scene where Loomis, he goes down and see Michael's gone from the grass, so he's walking around, and a guy come out his house, and he's like, "I've been trick or treated to death tonight." And the Dr. Loomis like, "You don't know what death is," and then I know, right? I was just like, Dr. Loomis, child, this is
Oh
where
my
it
God.
begins. Um,
Okay, extra. We get it.
right? And then we get the opening credits, but in the TV cut version, it's the opening credits,
Right.
and then we get the follow up to what happened that night. So then, when Dr.
Hmm.
Loomis said, "You don't know what death is," it quickly goes to a different scene.
Right.
So it's not even cut off, like it's no connection. It's real
Mm-mm.
choppy. And then there's also a moment where they take scenes from the end when Michael's chasing Laurie,
Right.
but they put him in the beginning of the movie when you see the cop, the security guard, and he's trying to figure out what's going on in the basement of the hospital. And the scenes that Michael's chasing Laurie, they literally just put him in the scene in the beginning like he's chasing the security guard. And I'm just like, this is wrong. What is happening?
So what you're saying is they it's not even like, oh, it's edited for television. It's an edited film. Like they are changing the narrative by restructuring it.
They restructured it. They even kept some characters alive where we thought they were dead.
Oh wow. It sounds like a bad fan edit.
It was yes, that's exactly. I felt like that's what it was. A really, really bad fan edit. So I watched that and I'm just like, okay, like I'll probably seen this as a kid, like on USA or something on TV, and just never noticed it. But now that I'm into these movies and I'm looking at them at a different lens now,
Right.
I noticed that stuff, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is really, really, really bad. It's horrible.
Oh boy.
And I also wanted to say, like, going back to my theory real quick, in that opening scene too, where you know how we always get our jack-o'-lanterns in the beginning of the Halloween movies, and in this one you see the jack-o'-lantern, but then when it opens up, you see a skull inside of it. And I feel like, going back to my theory, that represents Michael Myers. When he's like, that skull inside the jack-o'-lantern is now him revealed as him being purely evil. So I feel like that's kind of like a metaphor. So again, that's another thing I connected together. I know I'm reaching, y'all, but guess what? I'm having fun with this movie. I love it.
Yeah, you don't need to apologize for that. Fuck the haters.
But Joe, do you have any like favorite kills in there? Because there's quite a few that's like I've never seen before, and some of them are kind of like a little, I would say, intense, particularly the hammer in the head thing, because you've seen all of that. But do you have any favorite kills in this movie?
So I will confess, one of my favorites is not the most graphic, but I think the aftermath is incredibly graphic, and that's the nurse. So when you see her in the kind of like operating room and there's just blood everywhere. The first time I watched this movie, I actually thought that I was missing some kind of scene, because I was expecting to see that kill, even though I didn't want it, because this is the character that I want more of in this movie. I think she's really fascinating. I think she's kind and empathetic. She's so nice to Laurie. You don't think so?
Well, she's kind of Laurie, but everybody else, she's like...
Oh, she's a huge bitch to everybody else in the hospital, but it's because she's trying to run a hospital, Bobby.
That is true. That is true.
Like, I mean, this is one of those like classic hospitals in horror movies where they've got a full staff of...
There's nobody in this hospital.
There's nobody in the hospital, but they have a staff, but the staff is all like completely unprofessional. There's also a jacuzzi for no good reason. I mean, maybe there's water therapy treatment or something, but it's a mystery hospital, and I love that aspect. But I think this woman is interesting because she feels like a real person to me. Like, she's not kind to everyone, but she is a professional and she's nice to the patients, and she doesn't deserve the fate that befalls her. And it is so fucking aggressive and so over the top. Like, when you see what Michael has done to her, you're just like, holy, like, what did she do to you? Jesus. And that to me is the kind of quintessential takeaway from Halloween 2, is just like, Michael is so pissed at these people that he is killing them in the most excruciating ways. And I mean, it's not just like, oh, we learned from Friday the 13th. It's like, no, we're going to make Michael so fucking terrifying that like he will just kill you in the worst possible way.
Yeah. It's interesting that you chose that scene, because like you, when I was younger, I always thought I was missing apart from that too. I'm like, we've seen everybody else's death, but we didn't really see hers.
I'm still to this day kind of convinced that there's deleted footage somewhere, and they were just like, no, it's not needed because the aftermath is good enough.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's better. Sometimes it's better to see the aftermath and kind of just, it's like theater of the mind. You kind of just, look at it that way, and you come up with what he did to her, how he did it to her, versus us showing it to you. And sometimes I don't mind it, and that's why I like the first film a lot, because a lot of it is kind of like theater of the mind when he does certain things, not as far as kills, but other things. And then this one like is right there in your face. But I do. I think her name was Mrs. Alves or something. I did like her, but I used to be like, why are you being such a bitch? But you're right. She is running the hospital. She's trying to get everybody, like she was coming at old girls talking about you being late. You can't be doing
They're
this.
so unprofessional.
Right. So like a patient could be sitting here dying. You're like 15 minutes late. Like what's going on? But it is like I do want to know like how Michael got a hold of her, like and did all of that. That's very interesting.
Oh, it makes no sense at all, but that's fine. That's fine.
Right.
Okay, so what's your favorite death then?
Mine's is when the nurse gets I think the scalpel to the back and she's lifted up and then her little clogs drop to the floor and then she falls and then we get the chase scene. I love that whole lead up. Like it's great. Chef's kiss in my opinion. And I don't know, like again, I like the whole hammer to the head and needle to the eye, like those are cringy scenes, but just how this nurse was like trying to get Lori and like protect her, and then Michael just comes out of nowhere and stabs her in the back and lifts her up. I mean, which is unrealistic, but he has superhuman strength apparently. And when her claws just fall and then she just drops to the ground, and then that whole chase scene with the bad wig, because that's all I see is the wig moving around. I don't see Jamie Lee Curtis.
It's just the wig on screen.
It's just the wig just moving.
You're right though, like that to me is very symbolic of the transition from first film Michael to second film Michael, where it's unrealistic. Like you could not do that to a person because it just wouldn't work. But in movie world logic, where you're like, yes, I accept everything, the raw awesome strength that he has, that he could lift someone with a simple instrument like a scalpel, is just like it's awe-inspiring. You're like, holy shit, okay, this is for real. This guy's not fucking around.
Not at all. I knew he wasn't fucking around when he walked through that door. Just straightforward.
Just
he didn't
punch
through it. He just walked like it was nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
You walked through a glass door like it was nothing. All right, so let's talk about that scene. So this is one of my favorite chase scenes. I love this chase scene between Michael and Lori running, even though some of it is just like, child, you could have got away.
Yeah, but stop looking back. Stop pausing. Just like fucking make a break for it.
Well, that's the problem with a lot of these.
All of them. Yeah.
All of them. It's just that they keep stopping or they're falling, and then they want to see how far the killer is, catching up to them. It's just like, well, fuck that. Keep running.
Just go. I say this as someone who would die in the first scene of a horror film every time. Like I would not survive.
I don't think you would. I think you would get far enough in a horror film.
I think I would overthink it, because I'd be like, I've seen this 10 different times. How did people get out? Oh, I've already been killed. Never mind.
I know for me, I would be dead in the scene being chased by Michael, because first of all, I already know she was kind of just coming out of sedation a little bit, like she was a little,
she's a little sleepy.
She's a little sleepy, and she's kind of just like her vision's blurry. But when she goes into like that basement part and she just looking around and she tends to go through that window, I probably wouldn't have thought of that, so I probably would have just got in those boxes in the corner, and then that would have been the end of me. But I did like that scene where she goes up there and then somehow he makes it super fast up the steps. By the way he's walking, I would assume, like I believe if the Michael from the first movie, he would have got up there that quickly, because he was walking pretty quick. But in this one, he was just taking these little baby steps.
Taking his time.
Yeah.
I like to think of all killers from these films, particularly this era, where we're very much doing like slow walking, but always keeping up with these girls who are like running full tilt. I always think of that scene in Under the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, where he's like, let me show you how to do it. And he's like walking slowly. And the minute they turn around, he's like hauling ass. And then they turn back around and he's like, fucking slow.
That's how it is, though. I remember TikTok like a few months ago, all these kids were kind of like, if Michael Myers was chasing these scenarios, and they're like haul ass in it running, and somebody's playing Michael Myers walking slow, and they're trying to get their keys out, and they're showing these different scenarios of how Michael would catch up to them when they don't get the keys out quick enough. And I thought they were hilarious.
I love those. They were so funny, and those girls were great too.
No, they were. But it's the truth. But in this movie here, when he walk, I guess he get up them steps and she's in the elevator, and I'm like, do elevators work that way? Because I believe when you hold an elevator, because he put his like his hand through it with the scalpel, and for some reason it still was closing. I don't think
Yeah,
elevators work that way.
no.
I think elevators will open back up because they notice the pressure.
Oh, see, Bobby, elevators were different in 81. They
Were
didn't have
they?
the sensor. They didn't respond to people in the same way. Or maybe it's
Okay.
because he's dead. There's no humanity, so the elevator doesn't read him anymore. Mhm.
Okay.
Uh,
No.
I'm trying to work on your level here.
No.
You're like, no,
Oh.
don't do that to me. Don't use my theory against me.
Yeah, that scene was I was watching. I'm just like, no, that elevator would have opened up for sure, and she would have
Oh,
been
for sure.
dead, definitely. But we have to keep Laurie Strode alive.
Hmm.
Another iconic scene to me is her crawling, after Nurse Marion and Dr. Loomis get out the car with the sheriff, and they go inside the hospital, and I'm just like, so you don't have no voice to call
Yeah.
for them at that time, and then all of a sudden you get the I guess the strength to yell, "Help me!" So,
Hmm.
but I still feel like that was a good scene. I think that
Oh,
was a great
sure.
scene. I think it's an iconic scene too. And I see that in a lot of clips when they're talking about horror movies and Halloween in general.
Hmm.
But the scene where he just pops out of nowhere between his out like this tower and it's like a red light. Um, that scene was great. And then the theme comes back on, and then she's
Hmm.
running to the door and she's banging, and then they finally let her in, and then Michael bursts through the door, and then that's
So
when
good.
so good. I love that whole ending scene. And then ultimately he's blown the hell up because he
Hmm.
gets shot in the eyes by Lori. They have like
Yep.
a gas tank in there. Dr. Loomis has the lighter that I believe one of the sharers gave to him in the beginning of the movie, and he
Yep.
uses it and blow up the whole fucking room. And then I guess Michael's dead and Lori's alive because she got out. Oh yeah, and Dr. Loomis is supposed to be dead too.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
remember, like, this was the end of that arc, right? They planned
Hmm.
to wrap this up. They said, okay, we've got two movies. Now we're going to move on, do standalone anthology entries. Like, in some ways, I feel like as a theater going audience, I would have been satisfied with this as the end of Michael Myers and, like, okay, Laurie's done. She's safe. Maybe we'll come back in 20 years or 40 years and touch base, see how she's doing. But, like, I don't know. I think that as much as this movie often feels rushed and we're not giving characters their due, this is a good send off, like a sacrificial send off for Dr. Loomis. I think it's a satisfying end for Michael Myers, and we
Yeah.
let Laurie Strode go off and live her life. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I would have been satisfied.
Yes. No, me too. I know we all know that Laurie was traumatized. Even in the, this version, all her and Jamie Lee Curtis interviews this trauma is
Oh
about the
my God.
trauma,
The trauma, the
trauma,
yogurt trauma.
the
Yeah.
yogurt trauma, Activia trauma. Child, I have trauma from the Activia commercials because listen,
Hey, you know what? She's getting that money, and I love her for it. Like,
yes,
that
get
is
that
one thing I
coin.
love about Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, she will play your fucking game. She will do your tent pole and like go out and promote your movie. But
But she
like,
get
I love
that
that she is a
moolah.
working lady. She is after the money, and I respect her deeply for that.
Oh yes, and she can sell anything.
Oh my
Like
God, she's a fantastic salesperson.
yes,
Trauma, trauma, trauma.
right. She sold 2018 like it was like the best thing ever. Halloween Kills, she was going in on that movie, and
Hmm.
even like so you can't really take Jamie Lee Curtis um opinions too seriously because
No.
she's very like, and I love her. She's
Hmm.
queen, but
Yeah, but
no,
she will do things for a paycheck. She will wear
yes,
this wig for a
she will.
paycheck.
Listen, she wore this wig for a paycheck. She returned to Resurrection for a paycheck, and she said
Hmm.
that she was
Oh
like,
yes, I love
"I
that.
killed him, and they wanted me back because of the stupid contract or whatever." And she said, "You know
Hmm.
what? I'm coming back.
Because they're
But
gonna give me money.
they're gonna give me money, but I have to die. If
Yes.
Michael's not gonna die, I have to die." And that's they sent her off on Halloween Resurrection. But for me, I think even with H2O, I think that's a great send off because H2O
Hmm.
connects to the part one and part two. I feel like even if they just left it as that, I think that would have been great too. Like
Agreed.
when she chopped his fucking head off,
Ah, it's so satisfying.
goosebumps all over again. And I got problems with that movie too. But
Oh
that
sure.
ending was just
Hmm.
amazing. I feel like that was just Halloween Ends, they got some living up to if this is going to be the last of her. I already know Michael's probably going to end up surviving some
Oh,
way.
sure.
Yeah, but if they're going to get rid of her, or maybe if they do get rid of Michael, I don't know, do a different timeline. We need a comparison, like a better comparison, compared to H2O, because for me, I'm going to say somebody asked me this question the other day. They said, "Which Lori do you prefer? Do you
Oh,
prefer,
okay. Okay.
the H2O arc Lori, or
Yep.
this newer version?" I said, to be honest, I love H2O arc, and it's not because of
Always.
nostalgia, but it's just the fact that um her character, especially since we got part 2, and just seeing her still being chased after the boogeyman in the second film, and then we get H2O where she's dealing with her traumatic events in a different way,
Yes.
where I can't tell people how to handle traumatic events, so in the Blumhouse version, okay, to me it was a little much.
Yeah.
But again, that's this version of Laurie's way of handling it.
Mm-hmm.
In H2O, I prefer that version. And I
It feels
prefer,
more realistic, right? Like,
yeah,
and I don't want to say like, oh, people often self-medicate with booze and that kind of stuff. Like, sure, I did
right,
that a lot during the pandemic, so I
right,
relate to that. But
yeah,
it felt meatier, and it also felt, I hesitate to say this always because we're talking about fictional characters, but it felt to me truer to who Laurie is in this first and second film,
mm-hmm,
where she would be brittle but loving, whereas in the new films she's just like, she's an isolationist and a survivalist, and like it doesn't even really seem like she cares about Judy Greer. And I'm like, I get it. It's 40 years later. She's meant to be a completely different person, but also she's meant to be the exact same person. And it just doesn't feel like it resonates as closely.
yeah.
She's not my Lori.
Well, we'll see how Halloween ends. Because me,
Right.
I don't know. We'll see how
I mean,
this
she's going to be
wraps for her.
grieving, so we'll see.
Yeah. I'm scared though. I'm very scared, very
Yeah,
very scared. But we'll see. We are getting that next week, I believe. So
it is. Yeah.
we'll talk about that. But before we go, though, what would you rate Halloween 2? We got 80s gore. We have
Hmm.
Return of Michael Myers. We got Laurie in the wig. We have a lot going for this brother sister situation, which
Yep.
is weird. But yeah, what would you rate this out of, I guess, 5
I
jack o'
think
lanterns?
I fall somewhere between about a 3.5 and a 4. To me, this is a
Ooh,
very
okay.
good time. Like, I put this on, I know I'm gonna have fun. There's a scene that we haven't talked about that is my favorite. We don't have to unpack it because there's not that much to it,
Yeah,
but
go
I
for
love
it.
that the movie goes there, where Loomis gets it wrong and there's an innocent guy
Yes.
who dies, and like his death is terrible.
That's
And the
Ben
movie,
Tramer. That's
yes.
Laurie, the guy that she talks about in the first movie.
Hmm.
Like her crush. That's supposed to be her crush
Right.
underneath that mask.
Yeah. And I just, because to me that's actually also super realistic of what would happen, right? Like it's a small scale version of the lynch mob that we get in
And
Halloween
Halloween Kills.
Kills,
Yup.
right? Where it's like people lose their goddamn minds and just go off like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
half in the wind, half in the bag, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, like people die as a result. But this movie actually had the balls to do it in a more interesting and to me satisfying way. I just wish we could have like lived in those moments longer. But I love that that moment is in this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's lean, it's mean, it's fun. So yeah, I tend to err closer to a 4, but I recognize that if you're grading it on a Halloween scale compared to the first one, like this is a much inferior sequel.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. I'll give it a 4. Um, Asked me a few years ago, probably 2.5, 3 or something, but I'll give
Oh,
it a
okay.
4.
You've come around. You've come around.
So, we have history about my rating. You should see my recent movies. I'm not too sure if you'll agree with those, but listen.
I have taken people to task for their ratings, but I should not be throwing rocks or living in glass houses.
Look, I like what I like.
Hmm.
Um, but yes, I give this a 4. Again, I have such a great time. I watched it maybe 3 times already. Not this month, but just I guess this year, I should say.
Nice. Okay.
And I'm probably gonna watch it again.
Sure.
But I do like that scene. I do love that scene when you got the guy in the Michael Myers mask, but it's like blind and he's like running because apparently I
Mm-hmm.
guess he's drunk or something because his friends come looking for him later and he's
Yes.
like, oh, he left, the party drunk or something. And he's wearing
So
this stupid
sad.
mask. So sad. Even though how they identify him where it was dental records
Mm-hmm.
and they said, oh, he has no feelings, so he must be like, he can't be younger than 17 or something. And I'm just like, no, I'm
No,
sure
that
they
doesn't
that
make sense at all.
no, I'm like, what? Like, I'm sure he can get cavities at that age. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so and oh, all right,
Sure, we'll
um,
go along with it.
right. um, but that scene is intense because, like you said, it does
Mm-hmm.
remind me of kind of Halloween Kills where people's now starting to lose their minds because
Yes.
they don't know what's going on anymore, and it's just like I killed this person, he's still alive, and now you got this person wearing a mask similar to what you just seen,
Mm-hmm.
and you think that's the guy, but it's not, and now somebody innocent is dead.
Yes.
So that scene was pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yes, I do agree with you. I give this a 4, and I enjoy it so much. And like I said, I'm gonna probably watch it again. It's one of my repeated movies I'll probably watch more. Outside of the first one, I do watch this one out more than like 4 and 5 and
Yeah.
6 and H2O. A lot of people love
Oh,
H2O, but I do watch this a lot more. Are you the
okay.
okay?
I mean, I think even the kills in this one are stronger than H2O. Like H2O, I like it because it has the kind of Williamson dialogue, and it in some ways is like one big chase scene, which I quite like. I love me
Oh
a
yeah,
long chase scene, but I don't know any of those characters, and the deaths aren't as strong. Like basically, it's just Jodie Lynn O'Keefe's one in the dumbwaiter that I really really like in that
that's my
film.
favorite death in that
Oh, it's
movie.
the
Yeah,
best. It's so
yeah,
fucking good. I love a
yeah.
dumbwaiter in horror, but also I
Yes.
love watching people lose limbs in dumbwaiters.
Mhm.
Always a good time. But
Yes.
like the kills throughout Halloween 2 are good all the way through. Like you
Yeah.
don't always know who these characters are, but like they're dying in horrifically entertaining ways. So
Yes.
give the
Yes.
edge to Halloween 2.
Yes. Woo! Joe, real quick. I think go to your right. I think it's your right. There you go. It looked like your head is sitting on top.
I'm sinking.
No, it's Jamie Lee Curtis' body because her head is missing, so it's like your head is replacing hers on the. So it's just like you're like this. I'm immature sometimes, so don't mind me.
I love it. I
Um,
love it. I should have lined it up the whole way.
I know. All right. Well, that would be the review for Halloween 2. That rhymes. Thanks again, Joe, for coming on this last minute to talk this movie with me. I really, really appreciate it. We're gonna talk more very soon, obviously.
My pleasure.
Um, yes. And one more time, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so you can get a hold of me at B Stole My Remote, and that's the letter B. Talk to me about Halloween 2. Tell me about a hypothetical spinoff with that dude and like how the town eats itself because they accidentally killed the wrong guy.
Oh yeah, yeah. Ben Tramer, poor Ben Tramer.
Poor Ben.
And obviously you guys y'all hear, so y'all know Bobby likes the spooky, but you also can find me on the People Under the Scares podcast and also the Alter Tapes on Anatomy of a Scream Pod Squad. I always trip
There
over
you
that
go.
because I want to say podcast, but it's Pod
Fair.
Squad.
Fair.
Yes. But I'm on the Alter Tapes as well, and I think I have an episode coming up soon with Jazz, and that one's really, really good.
Nice.
Yes. And yeah, guys, happy Halloween, happy spooky season, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for season of The Witch. I feel like the most divisive
Oh,
Halloween film in this franchise.
well, yes. If you consider part of the franchise, for sure.
True, true. It's in the timeline scale, is in its own world
Always off on its own. Yep.
for now. You
For
don't know.
now.
Yeah. But that would be it, y'all, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.